It's difficult to see why Quake 4 is referenced as a redhead stepchild of the id Software lineup. Quake 2 was the last single-player-based entry in the series, and Quake 3 Arena was all about the multiplayer. So, when Raven Software took the reins of the franchise and decided to shift towards a single-player aspect once more, it actually excited me, especially since I actually did enjoy Doom 3, and it looked like a more action-packed version of Doom 3 with alien cyborgs instead of demons. In my younger years, I remember people mostly just ignoring it. From my colleagues, I got a lot of, it's okay, and it's basically Doom 3 with more military stuff. I know that the game also suffered from a couple of optimization issues like Doom 3 did, but this didn't stop it from being a pretty decent game. I believe that Quake 4 deserves a little more attention. It is actually well developed and has a couple of big names in there for voice actors. A lot of love was put into this game, and I think it's about time somebody shined a light on that. Do take note that I am covering the PC version of this game, since the 360 version is not backwards compatible and suffers from terrible frame rates in certain parts of the game. So let's survive the impossible, get Strogified, and kill some squids. The story in Quake 4 takes place right after Quake 2 when a lone Marine takes out the Strog's leader, known as the Macron. To explain what the Strog are, they are basically a planet of cybernetic beings who seek to assimilate other races. And for a while, they have been winning, until now. You play as the mute Matthew Kane, and as they say, he is a certified badass. Apparently, Kane has been through quite the ringer during the war and is now working with the highly elite Rhino Squad. This group of guys is where most of the story will be coming from in giving you your objectives throughout the game. It's really not too hard to understand. You are given an objective, you are told why it is important, and you usually have a member of the Rhino Squad or other NPCs accompanying you to whatever location you are sent to. This is definitely a far cry from previous entries since you are not entirely alone a good portion of the game. I enjoyed the voice acting very much, and the story was interesting enough to keep me playing, even if it got a bit Call of Duty-ish. The lines of each character definitely proved it was part of their character and didn't feel forced. Each squad member has their own gimmick and unique personality. You've got the all-American Texas Ranger soldier who likes to blow things up, the strong and tough Russian guy, and the egocentric technical mastermind, just to name a few. I really did care about a couple of these characters since they did have likable personalities. So when one or two died, it did actually affect me, but only a little bit. As you play the game, you learn more about the Strog and what they do to the races that they assimilate in order to make themselves stronger. Halfway through the game, Kane is captured and is converted into a Strog. Fortunately, Rhino saves him before a chip that is implanted into his brain is activated. This whole ordeal allows you, the player, to see what happens to humans who are captured and how crude it really is. It is both horrifying and a benefit story/gameplay-wise. It's important to mention that the game is very much an old-school-esque first-person shooter, so games like Quake 2 and Doom 3 are going to be the best games to compare it to. When you start off in the game, all you get is a blaster, and as you continue, you gradually gain access to all the weapons in the game. There are about 10 in total, and you can magically carry them all with ease. You won't be needing to swap in between 2 weapons at a time like in Halo or Call of Duty, but selecting the right tool for the job is a must. Some enemies are more vulnerable to different kinds of weapons, and some situations actually require the use of other weapons as well. The nice thing is, though, that most of your weapons receive upgrades that adds to their versatility. The nail gun gets homing bullets, the machine gun gets an extended clip, and the rocket launcher gets a 3-shot burst mode, just to name a few. You gain these upgrades as you play through the game, so they are earned slowly but surely. I would like to say that the shooting in this game does feel good and responsive. Firing every one of these weapons has their own unique feel. It is satisfying to see a shot, or a series of shots, actually obliterate your enemies. Navigation plays a vital role in this game as well. During the first half of the game, you start off as a normal human soldier with 100 points for armor and 100 points for health. As mentioned before, you are Strogified at the halfway point of the game. This makes it to where you have an extra 25 points of health and armor, faster movement speed, and you can actually access specific consoles and reach Strog machines when they could barely be understood beforehand. There were also points in the game where I could actually hear the chatter of Strogg machines/radios thanks to the Stroggification. This all plays a part in your survivability on the planet of Strogos. Being able to outmaneuver your opponents and outgun them is a must in bigger encounters, especially in the late game. The enemy roster in Quake 4 is pretty vast and tough. You've got your normal grunts that run out in the open, trying to take you out as quickly as possible but have little health, the brutes that have barely any range but a good portion of health, to fellow Stroggified Marines who use the same weapons as you do and will use whatever tactics necessary to take you out. Yeah, loads of fun. There are a couple of bosses that you get to fight, but these are far and in between, and they are not at all that hard to beat. The main thing that is going to kill you in this game is going to be poor enemy prioritization and not using cover when you need to. Some enemies you should definitely target first before taking on others. This can be the difference between you losing a lot of health/dying or barely losing any health at all. A major thing to take note of is that the game is very much a corridor shooter, and it is very reminiscent of the classic Quake 2. So don't expect any crazy large-scale battles. It's going to be mainly in the trench shootouts and getting yourself out of tough close quarters encounters. Another thing to take note would be the difficulty. Make sure you play on hard/lieutenant, especially if you consider yourself to be pretty decent at first-person shooter games. On normal, corporal, whichever it's called, the game is way too easy. Impact of attacks feel like they tickle most of the time, and enemies drop without too much of a fight. I'd say Lieutenant is where the true experience is at. It has just the right amount of enemies to deal with, and the rate that you take damage at is pretty reasonable, especially considering the type of enemies that you are fighting. If I had a cybernetically enhanced super soldier smack me at full force, I'd expect to lose 30% of my bodily fluids as well, armor and all. The other gripe I have with the gameplay loop is that it is interrupted by vehicle/turret sections that are clunkily most of the time and are really not all that exciting. Don't get me wrong, I understand what Raven was trying to do, which was to change up the gameplay and stretch the engine out beyond its limits. It was really more annoying than anything most of the time. Fortunately, there are only 4 of these sections throughout the game, and when you consider that there are 30 plus levels in the game and equals up to 10 or 12 hours of gameplay, it's easy to ignore it and outweigh with all the other great levels that you play through. The last and certainly not least aspect of the game is the graphics and presentation thanks to the highly acclaimed id Tech 4 engine. The game is still absolutely great to look at. The lighting and atmosphere is perfect for the kind of situations that we were put into, and it still holds up to this day. Don't get me wrong, it does show its age here or there, but I can't help but feel so good going through these environments and being delightfully horrified or in awe with how much detail is put into it. It's obvious that the artists were told to let their imaginations run wild here, and I absolutely loved it. The lighting is very atmospheric, and shadows are utilized very well in this engine. This is something that is not really seen very often in first-person shooters nowadays. The character models are something to behold as well. Even up close, enemies are horrifying to look at. I often found myself wondering how they were put together, and that made me shudder a couple of times. Human characters are about on par when it comes to facial animations, and their character models are also very detailed and well put together. Blood and gore is also a major part of the vision here. You will be shooting and blowing up plenty of monsters throughout the campaign, so you will be seeing plenty of gibs and blood splats as you play the game. Who knows? Maybe some of it will be coming from you as well. Even so, the engine shines throughout the game. My only gripe with the graphics engine in the year 2020 is that the software cannot properly read what kind of hardware you are dealing with, especially with more recent OSs and graphics cards like Windows 10 or a NVIDIA 900 whatever you've got. Fortunately, you can tell the game where to put these settings at via editing the configuration files. There are plenty of guides online on how to do this, and trust me, it isn't that hard to figure out. The sound effects are really punchy and great to hear as you are shooting Strogg. The music does leave something to be desired in my opinion. I get what they were going for. It was supposed to be more of a serious affair when it comes to the atmosphere and the campaign, but some more action-packed tracks would have done the game and its encounters some good.
Just getting started. We gotta take out that air defense cannon with the Strogg
Quake 4 does have a multiplayer, but it is dead to say the least. Like I said before, the single player was the main focus of this game. And for what you get out of it, it is really well made and is a great experience for anyone who is a first-person shooter fan and is looking for something different to play with an old-school feel. That is what you are getting out of this. Old-school first-person shooting with some awesome visuals and an interesting world to get yourself into. Quake 4 is relatively cheap to pick up and easy to trick out with mods and settings alike as long as you know what you are doing. If you want to play something that is bloody, challenging, and has a messed up story, this may be right up your alley. I highly recommend it. Hey, how's it going? I noticed that you're still here. Obviously, you like something about the video, so why don't you leave a like? If you want to see me talk about more nerd stuff, consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching. This took me a little longer than I expected, but it was worth the hard work I put into it. So again, thank you. You are awesome. Have a great day.